Okay, hopefully everybody's keeping well, and hopefully this time we're not going to have as many technical issues, a few technical issues the last time. But hopefully, yeah, everybody's keeping well, and hopefully everything will go a wee bit smoother than it did last time. But before we actually start, what I'm going to do is we'll just do a wee bit of recap on the flamethrower. As I say, we sort of lost the first third. I'll give a wee bit of background in terms of the fly and the thinking behind the fly. So as I say, the fly that we tied yesterday was the claret flamethrower. And this is really, flamethrowers was more of a style of pattern, style of tying, developed by Duncan Egan, Scottish fly tyer. And I suppose it was in the early 2000s he came up with that. I suppose that was the first time I had sort of heard about them, maybe seen the odd one. But he did an article in Fly Fishing and Fly Tying magazine, and he really talked about the flamethrower style of tying. And yeah, I went through some of it yesterday, but just to highlight a few other things, you'll see I tied it actually on a Salar hook, and Salars had just come onto the market around about that time, or certainly were getting popular. So Duncan actually specifically designed flamethrowers for that particular hook. So yeah, and it really just lends itself perfectly to that style of tying. Another key factor, you can maybe see here as well, these are very long hackles. And what Duncan was trying to do is in this wedge shape, so it's almost like a wedge. Hopefully you can see that. But that was to create a teardrop type profile, and I think that's certainly very effective, and you see that in Scandi flies as well, temple dogs. But one of the other things that he wanted to do was, like a lot of us, if you're tying flies from a cape, generally the fellas you'd be using are these ones here. So quite often what Duncan was finding was he'd be left with a cape, and all that was almost pretty bare. All the good fellas had been used, and he was left with these capes with long fellers at the very top here, these big fellers, long fellers. So that was one of also the thinking behind the flamethrower, was to actually come up with a fly that actually use these long feathers, otherwise that will otherwise not be used. The final thing was, and I suppose the key feature of the flamethrower really is the tail. So in a traditional pattern, the tail would be at the rear of the fly, but the key thing for this is Duncan moved the tail to the middle. So he has the first hackle comes in the middle of the fly, and it's a very dense, it's a collar hackle, and that allows then to the tail to sit up, and that sits away from the hook points. And if you compare that to more traditional long-tailed shrimp pattern, like a cascade, there's a variation of a cascade. Very, very effective pattern. But one of the things that happens is the tail is actually tied in at the rear here, at this rear point. And as you're fishing, sometimes what can happen is quite often you're bringing the line to recast, and you see your fly like that. So that's obviously not going to be fishing well. And that just sometimes can happen, particularly if you get a long mobile tail. That's bucktail, which isn't as bad. But if you use runner or fox, quite often in the turbulent flows, the tail can twist. So as I say, by moving the tail to that midpoint, it lifts the tail away from those hook points, so you get much fewer tangles with the hooks. So as I say, that's a recap of what I went through yesterday. Hopefully, sorry as I say for the technical issues, but hopefully it should be a bit smoother today. So that's basically our two. That was the second in the series of claret flies, and then as you can see there, so that was there was 4 in the series, and the one we're going to be tying today is the Faughan Shrimp. And again, Faughan Shrimp, very good pattern. I was having a wee think about it. I'm trying to remember when I started using it, but I think it was the early 2000s. and I managed to dig out from my fishing diary a picture here, and that was from the Easky River, lovely little spirit river in the west coast of Ireland. And you can see that was the 19th, hopefully you can see that, 19th of September 2004. And I caught 2 nice fish. That was lovely, fresh fish. Probably the last fish I probably actually took from the Easky. But beautiful little river, spirit river in the west coast of Ireland. But one of the other things that some of the guys were asking me about was tube versions. When I tied the McCormick's, I showed a wee video, and on that I had used a conehead version of the McCormick shrimp. And coneheads are very, very popular, and I use them a lot for my fishing. So yeah, I've decided to do a conehead version of the Faughan shrimp. And again, coneheads, I suppose, became more popular round about, again, maybe the mid to late 2000s. And I was sort of starting to experiment with them, and I hadn't actually seen many people using them for Irish traditional shrimp patterns. So I did an article, this was in Fly Fishing, Fly Tying, on using coneheads. That was way back. So we'll just go through how to actually use these. Lots of different ways to tie coneheads, but essentially what I like to do is tie them directly onto a plastic tube. So we shall have a go with that today, and see how we go. Okay, so yeah, first thing we're going to do, as I say, I tie them on plastic tubes. So just got a wee adapter. This is a newer one. So just put that into your vise, and hopefully just line that up. The thing with the needles, you do just need to be careful with them, because obviously that's quite a sharp point. So particularly if you're moving your arm, it's very easy to catch. But that's just an occupational hazard. But essentially what we're going to be doing is tying on humour. This is a small size, and that's rigid enough that you can actually tie directly onto that. The only time maybe you have to be a wee bit careful is if you're tying maybe with a very heavy tungsten cone or a long fly. It's not quite rigid enough. But sort of small to medium tube flies, and not too heavy, this works very well. It was actually friend Ross McDonald had showed me how to tie one technique, how to use these way back, and that's what I've been using ever since. But I say that would be my preferred method of tying with the cone heads. So I've got a little cone head here. I don't know if you can actually see that. It's very small. That's a small one. And so humour stuff is very good. Again, back when I was doing that magazine article, I had contacted Ollie at Humour, and he had sent me some materials to play with. But essentially, that's a small cone head, and that goes directly onto the small tubing, and then to the end of that, you're essentially just attaching some junction tubing. So that just fits on to the end like that, and then you would cut that. So that's really your fly. So we'll show how all that is put together now. So the first thing we do is just we want to burr the end of this tube liner. So just get a lighter and just gently burr that. And what we want to be doing is creating a little ridge, and then let's just do a little bit more. And what we want to be doing is just creating a stop point. And then with a scalpel or a pair of scissors, whatever you prefer, just cut that to the right length. So hopefully you can see there it's got a little bit of a ridge on that, and essentially whenever you put the junction tube, that'll stop it from going anywhere. So we just put that back onto the vise, and because this is a tapered needle, it has a nice snug fit. See if that's, we bit straighter. Okay, so that's that in. And then the thread we're going to be tying is just on white. So just start at the midpoint just as usual. And we're going to work our way down towards the rear of the fly. We'll just put a wee coat of varnish on this. Whenever you're tying onto the tubing, it's always good just to put a bit of varnish. And then one of the things I like to do, I'm going to be using, as you saw there, clear junction tubing. So what you can actually do is you can actually put a bit of sort of sparkling material, and this is mylar, pearl mylar tinsel. You can actually tie a bit of that underneath the junction tubing, and it gives just an extra little trigger point. That's something I've been doing for a long time. So you can just tie that at the side, wrap that down, and just work our way down to the tail of that. And then just wrap that round. Oh, that's not what you want to do. That's the other thing that can happen with tubes. If you don't put that in tight enough, it can unravel just like it did. So that's basically what not to do. So we'll get another strand of that, and we'll tie that in again. Again, same thing. Maybe try to do a neater job this time. And get a wee bit of our varnish. Spread that on. And then just wrap that down just like we did before. Get that the edge, and because we're tying on black tubing, the pearl gives a really nice effect. And then what we'll do is we'll just go through that varnish just to give ourselves a nice bed of thread, and then we'll do a half hitch just to make sure that doesn't go anywhere, and then we'll just get some of this junction tubing. So lots of different junction tubing you can use. This is a nice clear one. That was actually Denny Brennan uses in some of his flies. Denny's a great fly tyer, one of the best around. So just cut the length of that off, and then detach that, and then we're just going to slide that junction tubing up, and hopefully you can see that. And the reason why I put that in now, that sort of gives you a gauge of the length that you want to be tying the hooks. So I always put it in at that particular point. So that's our fly, and you can see then essentially then just to finish that, once we've tied the body, the last thing we'll be doing is slipping in our cone, and that's really the body of the gubbings of the tube. So we'll just put that aside for the moment. So essentially from here on in, it's really the tying as you would of a traditional Irish shrimp fly. So we'll get 3 hackles. One of the things that I always like to do, because you've got the junction tubing here, there's a wee bit of a bump, so it is important that you do tie in a rib, or not a rib, a tag. So this is again oval gold. Just tie that at the side, just as usual, and just tie that right up to the face of the junction tubing. just cut that off. That's per usual. So that's us ready to tie in the tail. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a wee bit of flash in this. I'm known for flash. Traditionalists obviously don't like flash, but the pattern I'm going to use is it's a UV flash, so it just gives a very subtle little bit of flash, but without being too much. So just cut off a strand of that. And as I say, I don't like to have too much of this, so just lift and lock underneath. Pull it down a shorter length. Couple of wraps, and then fold that back on itself and just lock it in, and I cut it off the length of the tail. And that's us. So the tail in this Faughan shrimp is a golden pheasant, just a natural golden pheasant. So I'm just going to tie that in now, and you can see I've measured that. This it's going to be tying a fly that would be approximately a sort of a size 10, so fairly standard sort of pattern, sort of size. So just tie that in the side as per normal. Stroke those fibres back, and then cut the waist end and just wrap that round as you would normally do. It's a little bit easier. Good thing about tubes is that you don't have to contend with the hackle points, or not the hackle points, the hook points. So it's a wee bit, in that respect, a wee bit easier to tie. But just as usual, just stroke those feathers back so we've got a nice even spread of fibers. And I'll cut off that stalk, just do a couple of more wraps so the stalk's in the middle. That's a bit of floss. So essentially we've got our tail in now, and then the next thing we're going to be tying in is the body. And the body on this fly, we'll tie in a rib first. It's a gold rib, so this is a gold medium. And just tie that in as you normally would. And yes, the body of this, the rear body of this is a nice orange colour, so it's not a bright orange, it's almost like a burnt orange. And again, I'm using the trusty Danville's. So just cut a length of that off. And I suppose it's one of the things that's sort of quite distinct about this pattern. It's a nice, nice sort of autumnal type colours. I'll also say I've used it generally again in the autumn. So just stroke those feathers, or stroke that floss back, just to flatten it. Because we're doing a double run, if there is the odd little gap, don't worry too much. Just come over the top of that golden pheasant. Just helps to bind it down. Could have done that with the thread, but when we've got the floss, it does the same job. So That's our floss body in. I haven't used this one in a little while. There's a few frayed fibres want to go somewhere. But you can hopefully see there, it gives a nice look to the fly, and then just tie a rib in for normal. See if we can get 3. Generally prefer 3 wraps. And again, we'll keep that because the front rib is also gold. So that's that. Middle hackle is, again, it's orange, but it's not a bright orange. It's like a burnt orange. I didn't have a regular burnt orange hackle, but I have this nice badger. This is, as I say, this is a badger saddle. Badger saddles are a bit different from a badger cape. As I say, with saddles, they're very good if you're using fellers or tan hooks of all, or flies of all one size, because generally the fellers will all be that one size. As long as those two match, if you're tan with the right size, then they can be very good. But you will always get, let me just see by comparison. So that's a neck, and you can see you have a lot more feathers essentially. With the saddle, you're only getting one or two different sizes of feather, whereas with the neck you're getting a lot more. So generally I would go for the neck, but if you're tying, say, 12s to 10s, sometimes 8, but generally 10 to 12, saddles can be very good. But that's the feather that we'll be using. And you can see here it's a really nice burnt orange, which really contrasts. It's very nice with the orange floss body. So again, just as usual, we'll strip off some of these hackles. We want to be using these longer fibres towards the middle. So again, whenever I'm cutting this here, I'll be starting further down you would maybe ordinarily. That's our prepared feather now. So we'll just get a little bit of wax. Just get that there. Dean, how's it going? Hopefully you're keeping well, and I'm glad you're enjoying this new series. Just the back of the scissors, stroke those fibres back. As I said, just helps to introduce that nice backward slope, which is essentially what we're looking for. Take that off, and with our hackle pliers, we'll just do wraps now. So just nice touching terms is normal. As I say, whenever I was doing that article, I had been chatting to another friend of mine, Alan Rees, very well-known casting instructor and fly tyer from Wales, and we were chatting about some of the new materials and cones in particular, and he happened to mention that a friend of his, Alan Bailey, had started to experiment with it was actually an uscrub, Welsh sort of version of a Irish type shrimp, and he had started using cone heads. So that was about the same time that I had started to experiment with it myself. So as I say, I hadn't sort of seen anybody else using cone heads in Irish traditional shrimp patterns before that. just by coincidence Al had been trying those in Wales, so that was what the sort of article was about. And I was really just trying to let people know we're worth maybe experimenting with other ways of tying our shrimps. So that's our middle hackle in now. So we'll just get our rib and tie that into the side. And then again we've got our claret floss. So the same as before, it's just the Danville's nice shiny claret floss. Lift and lock in, pull that to the desired length, secure it in, and then we'll do our touch and wraps. Again, this is slightly, sometimes you get frayed edges. And that's our floss tied in. And one obviously the big advantages of using tubes as well is a lot of places now have different rules, so you can't always use a double hook. Sometimes it is single hooks, so when you're using a tube version of an Irish shrimp, or any tube I suppose, the big advantage is you can then just change the hook. So it's another advantage of using tube flies. And as I say, in this case it's a little cone head. Okay, so that's really our body, our front body, and then just a couple more things now to do. Jungle cock. Add some of that in. I'm going to cut these. Actually broke the hackle, or the stalk, a little bit short. It's a little bit more tricky to tie in. I think we're okay. A little bit more tricky to tie in, but we've got there. So the last thing now is really just our front hackle, which is it's a nice dark claret filler. Hopefully you can see that. So just tie that at the side just as usual. Yeah, Alan's a great instructor, Dean, great guy as well. And he can certainly catch sea trout or shoon. Great guy. And as I say, ties a very mean fly as well. Okay, just get our hackle pliers. And just do our wraps. And one of the things when you're tying in cone heads, do more wraps than you would normally do, because quite often the cone head will it'll angle the fibers back. So it is always good just to do a few more wraps than you would ordinarily do. And one wee trick is just to, before you actually start finishing the hackle, just put in the cone just to see, give yourself a gauge of Because what you want a nice snug fit. You don't want to have the cone sitting over here with a gap. Hopefully you maybe see that. You want a nice snug fit, so that'll actually help you to gauge. So that's enough wraps there now. We'll just move those fibers. Right, so we're nearly done now. And again, what we're going to do is just try the cone in just for size, so you can see how that's going to slip on there. So pretty much perfect. So just do a couple of half edges. Some people don't even do a half edge, just use super glue, but I always prefer to do at least one just for belt and braces. So what we're going to do now is just put a bit of super glue over the thread, and then put on our cone, and then that's us nearly finished. Super glue has got quite thick. I'll have to get some more soon. So as I say, just putting a bit of super glue on the thread head. Just ease that tube off. And just slide that on into place. And that should just fit nicely. So just give that a few seconds just to harden. But hopefully you can really see that's nice. It's looking well. That's the right sort of proportion is what you really would want. So once that's set, and just get your, what we'll be doing is just cutting off that about 2 or 3 mil, just with your scalpel. So hopefully you can see there's just a couple of mil, and then we're going to what's called just burr the edge of that. And when you're putting those back in, always just be careful you don't spike yourself with a needle. So again, just get your lighter and just burr that. Some people do it vertically. I prefer just do it like this. And then what I also like to do is just to make sure that you can see there that wee bit of sparkle is just UV sparkle. Not too much subtle, but I say it just helps to give it a wee bit of an extra edge. I always like just to put that down, force that down, just to make sure that whenever you were burring the hole, that it didn't close over. It just makes it a wee bit easier for your when you're putting your thread on it. So essentially that's our little Faughan shrimp. As I say, very good pattern that I've used myself quite a lot. It's done very well. Very good back end sort of pattern. As I say, I would fish it from sort of August, but particularly September. But yeah, really nice little pattern, and hopefully everybody has enjoyed that. So the very final pattern is going to be this boyo here. This may be a new one for some people. but it's actually a Faughan shrimp, which is a Scottish pattern. It's actually one that Ross came up with, Ross McDonald. He's a big fan of claret, so we look forward to trying that one tomorrow. And yeah, as I say, hopefully everybody's keeping well. Stay safe as usual. If you do have any questions, yeah, feel free to ask me in the comments section. I'll try my best to answer them. But otherwise, yeah, hopefully everybody's enjoyed this. I don't want to have faith that the technology seems to have worked this time. So yeah, hopefully everybody's keeping well. And if you like this, subscribe to see some more. And join me same time tomorrow for the final in the series. And as I say, that will be the Faughan shrimp. Alrighty, all the best, and see you tomorrow.